Thank you for being here, and thank you for that hearing yesterday. I woke up this morning thinking, I'll go to the New York Times, I'll go to mainstream media and see front page coverage of it. Here's the New York Times this morning. I don't see front page. I don't see anything about this hearing. To me, this is one of the biggest scandals, arguably in decades. You can get how chickpeas are coming for your potato salad on the front page of the New York Times. That's being covered by them. But the mainstream media is totally ignoring this story. Why do you think that is?
Because they're complicit in the cover-up. And really, we're talking about two different hearings and two different stories. My report was a couple of weeks ago where we revealed the fact that Peter Marks, head of the division within FDA that approves vaccines and surveils the safety of them,
right,
knew by March of 2021 that these safety signals were screaming at him that their algorithm that they were going to use to analyze VAERS was going to hide those safety signals, and they kept using that algorithm and continue to lie to the American public. And I used yesterday's hearing to point out the fact that the mainstream media is ignoring that hearing. And then Rand held an excellent hearing yesterday where he had the CIA whistleblower who was assigned by Tulsi Gabbard because of President Trump's executive order to get to the truth of a bunch of things. Okay, but one of them was the COVID origin. That group inside the Office of the Director of National Intelligence could not get information from CIA. CIA obstructed their efforts. They spied on their computers of the people working in that group that Tulsi Gabbard set up. But the main thing that was revealed here is that the CIA, the scientists they used were fed them by Fauci. And it just becomes, listen, you've known this, or we've certainly suspected this, right. Fauci was involved in an enormous cover-up. If you just go through the timeline of Anthony Fauci, first of all, read Robert Kennedy's book, The Real Anthony Fauci, you'll see really what an evil person this is. But you get Anthony Fauci funding gain of function research for years, if not decades. Then in 2015, when he had a gain of function research moratorium, he changed the definition of gain of function research.
Right.
He predicted in 2017 that this administration, the Trump administration, was going to have to deal with some kind of pandemic, some kind of virus. He holds an event, a panel at the Milken Institute in, I think, October of 2019, with Rick Bright bemoaning the fact. He holds an event, a panel at the Milken Institute in, I think, October of 2019, with Rick Bright bemoaning the fact that we don't have a universal vaccination program, that the flu just isn't doing it, we're going to need a pandemic. They hold Event 201 in late 2019, right before the pandemic, that just lays out, it is the framework, exactly how they're going to handle a pandemic. And, whoa, what a surprise. 2 months later, we're in the midst of a pandemic, and they follow exactly the playbook of Event 201. They censor information. They've got a off-the-shelf vaccine. It's not a vaccine. It's gene therapy injection. And it just follows from there. And by the end of January, he's got to be freaking out because he knows that he funded all this. So he assembles a group of supposedly independent scientists that he's been funding with millions of dollars into their research centers, into their universities. He assembles that group who initially are saying, no, we think this is man-made. Within a day or two, he has them all turned. No, they're man-made is a conspiracy theory, and they come up with the approximate origin cover-up paper, and we take it from there. And then, that, of course, the media is all in on that. Anybody who talked about it being man-made is a conspiracy theorist. Anybody that talked about vaccine injuries is pilloried and vilified. So again, what's happening is the story is now being told. More and more of the parts that those of us who were involved in trying to expose this American public, where we were ridiculed and vilified and excoriated for telling the truth or exposing the truth, what we were saying is just being affirmed left and right.
No, and I bring up your report because I think it's important, and I think, and of course, yesterday's hearing, to me, it's all part of one story.
It is,
and so how did these Biden health officials use this broken reporting system to basically hide these adverse events from these COVID shots? Because if you look at VAERS and you look at 16,000 to 19,000, as they say, unconfirmed death reports, but sources I've been speaking to say it's well into the millions. But of course, we don't have any official numbers from the government because they won't share it with us. But how do they manipulate this system in order to hide this?
So let me get into a little detail to explain this. So when they set up VAERS in 1990 until 2021, on average, there are about 280 deaths per year reported to VAERS associated with some kind of vaccine, anaphylactic shock, that kind of thing, about 280 deaths per year. 2021, there are over 21,000 deaths reported worldwide, 21,000. Back then, 2020 was probably about 25% were reported dying within a day or two of getting the injection. So they always say, COVID doesn't prove causation. Well, that's a correlation you ought to look at. But again, we went from 280 per year to 21,000. So this had to be freaking out the people in the FDA that approved that emergency use authorization. Okay, that they approved it, they unleashed an experimental gene therapy that now is killing people, that is permanently disabling them. They didn't want to admit they were wrong approving that. But on March 1st, their primary data mining expert, working with the inventor of the algorithm that analyzes VAERS data, and just understand, you need a sophisticated algorithm when you have pretty small little safety signals. In all kinds of reports, you need something to really look at that data. You didn't need a sophisticated algorithm when you went from 280 deaths to 21,000. So they got to be freaking out. They get a briefing on March 1st that their algorithm they were using was going to mask and hide the safety signals. Now, I have to believe internally they're going, great.
Right.
This unfortunately, the woman who did it didn't give up. 26 days later, they developed a new algorithm that showed 49 cases of extreme masking, 25 safety signals on very serious adverse events like sudden cardiac death, Bell's palsy, pulmonary infarction, different types of strokes. And then they didn't go away. Month after month after month, they continued to run these data things. They would show more safety signals on more serious adverse events. They didn't pin a medal on their chest. They shunted them off to the side. They ordered her to cease and desist. They said, this isn't your division. You work in a different division. Cut it out. We didn't tell you to do this. Do what we tell you to do. So this is a major scandal. I mean, put yourself in the position of a parent, let's say,
right,
who in June, July, August, or whenever they finally approve this for children, where the President of the United States is mandating this, where the President of the United States say this is a pandemic of unvaccinated, get vaccinated so don't kill your grandmother. Imagine you're one of those parents that are a little gun shy about using this experimental gene therapy, but you're listening to Peter Marks. You're listening to the president. You're listening to all these people say, "Oh no, this is safe and effective." We're not seeing any safety signals. The adverse events we're seeing are rare and mild. And you have your child get that injection, and unfortunately, we know there were a lot of children that died in their sleep the next day. We now have, and I'm trying to get this information out of FDA, and as much as Bobby Kennedy wants to try and get it to me, he's being continued to be sabotaged within. But the Vinay Prasad, who's now left the FDA, issued a memo describing a study within the FDA of 96 autopsies of children who died after getting the injection. 96. Now, isn't almost impossible to get an autopsy during COVID because they didn't want to know. But there were 96 autopsies the FDA reviewed. They concluded that 10 of those for sure died of the injection. Wow. Now, again, that is scratching the surface. That's just minimizing the harm here. But we know the FDA concluded 10 children died of the vaccine, of the injection. And all this is being covered up. So, again, this happened in March 1st, March 26th of 2021. We've been lied to ever since. People made decisions. They thought they were informed. They were informed that these things were safe and effective. They were informed that whatever adverse events were rare and mild, nothing could have been further from the truth. They took the injection. People have been permanently disabled. People have died. And the mainstream media, not a word.
Well,
not a word.